You don't have time for study techniques like the Pomodoro method because in your exam, I'm Salim, I'm a med student, and I've also done an undergrad and postgraduate degree. And from my 7 years at uni, I figured out the most efficient way to study in exam season. So in no particular order, I'll go through 6 tips for how you should study to ace your exams. So first, if you're cramming for exams, there's going to be a lot of content to get through, so it's hard to know where to start. And because of this, students panic and try to skim through as much as possible, but they won't remember much of what they read. So the best way to deal with a lot of content is to work backwards. This is by looking at the end of a chapter of your textbooks because it has a summary of the key points covering the core concepts of the topic. Instead of highlighting those points, copy them to a document so that you have a list with all of your topics and the key concepts that you can easily look back on. Whenever you go through new topics and add to the document, test yourself on the key concepts and definitions you wrote down. This is active recall and it's going to help you retain a lot more information than just skimming through a load of content. The next point is a mistake students make where they focus on time, thinking that if they study 10 hours a day, then that's productive. But this usually ends up as surface level work where you aren't being very productive. So instead of focusing on time, focus on intensity. And there's 2 ways to do this. The first is by applying Parkinson's law, making sure that you study in blocks of an hour or 2 for each subject or topic. This gives you pressure to do intense productive work, forcing you to focus on only the important information before moving on to the next topic. The second way to focus on intensity is to have a multisensory learning approach. Because when you think of a topic, you don't think of only words. You think of what you saw, what you heard, and what you read. So watch your videos on topics you're studying because they're more condensed than your textbooks. And they'll have the key details you need that you can add onto the document you make from the first point of this video. And now I have a question. Do you feel stressed when it's exam day? Your answer is probably an obvious yes, but chances are you aren't minimizing the stress you have. And when you're stressed, you can't focus, making you lose easy marks in the exam. And what makes this worse is using study techniques like the Pomodoro method, because in your exam, you won't stop after 25 minutes to take a nice 5-minute break. But because you got used to using these techniques in your exam season study sessions, it's difficult to not do your exam in the same way, and that stresses you more. So to reduce your stress, make your study sessions like your exams. Hide your phone. Don't play music or even white noise in the background. Set a timer that's equal to how long your exam is, and don't leave your seat more than once in that time. Copy your exam environment as much as possible so that when you have your exam, you'd have mentally adapted to the stress of your exam conditions and have focus for the entire exam. Now, something you might have heard from other people and even from me is being told to make your own questions and go through them for active recall. But when it's close to exams, I'd actually tell you to avoid doing that if you can. Because the thing is, when you do questions you've made yourself, it's easy to think, oh yeah, I know this, it's fine, even if you don't do the question properly. And that's partly because you don't have a marking criteria for questions you've made. So what you should do is practice real exam questions or questions from other people. This isn't just about the questions, it's also about getting a range of question styles so that you improve your ability to apply what you've learned into different scenarios. And if you don't have access to past exam papers, ask students a year above you for resources or Google your subject plus Quizlet, and chances are there'll be questions for free. And just like making a document for key concepts as in the first point, have another document to track your wrong answers so that you can practice active recall to go through the mistakes after. Now, one thing people say is to get a good amount of sleep when your exams are coming up. And I do agree with this, but at the same time, if you can't sleep, then I don't think you should. Because sometimes a day before an exam, I'd find it difficult to sleep, and staying in bed struggling to sleep makes things worse. So instead of being awake in bed doing nothing and getting more anxious, I'd get back up and study until I feel tired. This usually ends up as around 30 minutes, helping me to use that time productively, then fall asleep when I'm actually able to. But obviously don't overdo this and make sure you sleep for at least 7 hours. And a quick tip for the morning of your exam is to avoid having a breakfast that's too high in simple carbs, because it usually makes people feel tired, which isn't what you want when you do your exam. And now, a problem most students face in exam season is feeling tired, making it difficult to study, especially after school or uni. So in this video here, I'll talk about how to study even when you're tired so that you can maintain focus during exam season. So click the video to learn more.